I'd like to introduce the Lady Mayor.
Thank you. Lord Chancellor, Ministers Baroness Hodge, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to Mansion House. So the City of London Corporation is very pleased that we need to get some new furniture because they're very tippy. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. It's that and the steps, which are a bit slippy as well, which I know in heels, I'm afraid. So the City of London Corporation is very pleased to host this launch of the government's anti-corruption strategy. A strategy that we really welcome as an important tool to tackle the blight of corruption. As Ambassador for the UK's financial and professional services sector, I know that our position as a global financial centre really does rely on our reputation, because it depends on trust. And corruption, of course, is corrosive to trust. It's damaging to markets, and it's absolutely devastating to our democratic institutions. So within the city, we've adopted an updated anti-fraud and corruption strategy this year to prevent, deter and detect fraud and corruption in any of its guises. Knowing how important this is for our economy and our democracy, as well as our standing in the world, we're very pleased to support the launch of this new strategy. And crucially, I think, it provides support to those who are brave enough to speak out, which we all must do. We know it's never easy to do, but that's how we stop corruption. And I have to do a quick call out to the City of London Police, who have a very special role in tackling fraud and economic crime. And we're very proud too of the work done by our domestic corruption unit, launched by the Security Minister a year ago, a collaboration with my old department, the Home Office. And this has enhanced our intelligence capabilities, our ability to launch investigations, and has given us power to respond rapidly. This unit has a key role to play, and I know the City Police are very much looking forward to playing their part. So we welcome the discussion this afternoon on how we can help and get behind this strategy and work together to purge corruption from our economy. But now I'd like to hand over to our Policy Chair, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lady Mayor, for that welcome, and importantly for hosting us this afternoon in your splendid residence here at Mansion House. We are most grateful. As the Lady Mayor said, my name's Chris Hayward. I am the Policy Chairman of the City of London Corporation, and I am your Master of Ceremonies for the afternoon. Now, if I may, I'd like to quickly cover off a couple of housekeeping points. Firstly, we're not expecting a fire alarm drill, so if the alarm sounds, please look to Mansion House staff and follow them promptly through fire exits. Restrooms are back down the stairs by the cloakroom, or for those with access needs, they are on the ground floor near the lift. And for those that might need it, there is a quiet room available for prayers and reflection on the third floor. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to the reason why we are all here, of course, the launch of the government's anti-corruption strategy. We have a great agenda this afternoon with some fantastic contributors. Shortly, we are going to hear from the Security Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, who is also the Lord Chancellor, to give him his full titles. This will be followed by a panel discussion with representatives from across law enforcement, civil society, industry and Parliament, chaired by Dr. Sue Hawley, the Executive Director of Spotlight on the subject of corruption. And then we will have a short break for refreshments, and afterwards we will return for a ministerial fireside chat led by the Prime Minister's anti-corruption champion, Baroness Hodge. And then, following some closing remarks from myself, you are invited to join us in the salon for a reception sponsored by the UK Anti-Corruption Coalition, at which we will also have a few words from Rachel Blake MP, our Member of Parliament here in the cities of London and Westminster. So, without further ado from me, I'm delighted now to welcome to the podium Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister. Dan.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chris, and thank you, Lady Mayor, for your kind hospitality. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all today, at long last, to launch the UK's anti-corruption strategy. And what a venue for it. I'm told that construction of Mansion House began in 1739, but it would be almost 20 years before the then Lord Mayor took up residence. Quite the wait. But being here in these spectacular surroundings, I think we'd all agree that it was worth it. And the same applies, I hope, to the strategy that we are introducing today, albeit not as quite a long a wait as for Mansion House, even if at times, and particularly for those people who were working on the strategy, it might have felt like it was taking us 20 years. In fact, perhaps there are some similarities between a big construction project and the development of a major policy package. Everyone has an opinion on what should go where. And at times, you do wonder whether the job will get finished. But it has. And this is the perfect place to reflect on the efforts that have brought us to this point and to look forward to the challenges ahead. Now, Mansion House has been the site of many important and memorable speeches down the years, and you are about to witness another. Now, just in case anyone is thinking that I'm talking about my speech and getting a bit full of myself, I'm definitely not. I am, of course, referring to our Lord Chancellor and Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, who we'll have the privilege of hearing from in just a moment. All of the top performers need someone to warm up the crowd, and I'm delighted to be performing that role today. David's presence here not only underscores the strong support for the anti-corruption agenda at the very highest levels of government, but it is also a reflection of his leadership in this arena and his continued commitment to driving forward efforts both at home and overseas. The headline act is on its way very soon, but I do just want to take the opportunity to thank all of those from civil society, business, Parliament, and law enforcement, both in this room and beyond, for all of your tireless work. I also want to take the opportunity to offer special praise to Baroness Margaret Hodge, who has energised us all on this issue and who undoubtedly, knowing Margaret, will continue to hold us account on the implementation of the strategy in the years to come. I can say that this has been a truly cross-government endeavour involving many ministerial colleagues, including in particular Ministers Stephen Doughty and Lucy Rigby, who I look forward to joining on stage a bit later on this afternoon. My profound thanks also goes to the officials who've worked on the strategy. We can certainly be heartened by how united an effort this has been. More than 30 teams and agencies have had a hand in the strategy's 120 commitments, which, taken together, will enable us to combat corrupt actors and their funds, tackle vulnerabilities in the UK, and build global resilience. These goals must be and will be a top priority and are key to delivering our plan for change. Because we know that a government that carries the trust of the public is better placed to deliver what matters: effective public services, strong national security, and the creation of a stable foundation for growth. Everything I've seen and heard about this threat over the year and a half that I've been the Security Minister leads me to the unequivocal conclusion that corruption makes us less safe. If a corrupt insider assists organised criminals in evading UK border controls, or a professional enabler helps kleptocrats to hide their corrupt funds, this perpetuates crime and empowers those who seek to cause harm to the UK and to our citizens. Corruption fuels instability overseas, which can make it easier for organised criminals, terrorists and kleptocrats to operate. It is one of the drivers of irregular migration. As the National Security Strategy sets out, all elements of our security are supported by our ability to tackle these threats. Russia's war against Ukraine has highlighted how highly corrupt political regimes pose a direct national security threat, whether by harming our allies and their security or by pursuing their malign interests on UK soil. That is why earlier this year I announced our expansion to the government's exclusion guidance, giving the Home Secretary the ability to block elites with links to Putin's regime from entering the UK. This strategy builds on the work already taking place at the intersection between corruption and national security, with measures to disrupt kleptocrats from entering UK borders and exploiting our institutions, preventing corrupt actors from concealing and benefiting from illicit funds in the UK and overseas, and deploying specialist law enforcement capabilities against corruption. As the lead minister accountable for the delivery of the strategy, I'm looking forward to working closely with you all over the coming weeks, months and years to drive progress across government, support our operational partners and hold the system to account. It now just remains for me to introduce my colleague, the Right Honourable David Lammy, Deputy Prime Minister and Lord Chancellor. He and I are in total agreement that we need to go further and faster in our fight against corruption. And it is now my pleasure to invite David to speak to us about how, through this new strategy, we will do exactly that. David, over to you.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here to launch the UK's anti-corruption strategy. And obviously it's incredibly fitting that we're doing that in the ancient heart of London, a city that has long understood the truth at the core of commerce, that trust is everything, that where prosperity is earned, not stolen, where everyone wins when everyone plays by the rules, that tradition runs deep. From the livery companies that set standards here centuries ago, to the innovators and the investors who make the square mile a global powerhouse today, this strategy protects that legacy. It says something fundamental about who we are as a country, that integrity, accountability, transparency are not cheap slogans, but values that we live by. And, of course, it's great to be joined by my dear friend Margaret Hodge, who has championed those values across her political life, the Prime Minister's anti-corruption champion. But also Dan Jarvis and everyone here who has pushed for a more joined-up fight against corruption. Today then marks a decisive step forward. The last time I spoke at a conference such as this was before the election. It was just a few days, in fact, before the general election was called. None of us knew it was going to be called. And I set out what I hoped we would do in government. And so it's wonderful, less than 18 months later, to be here launching this strategy. In its many forms, the dark hand of corruption reaches into our lives, on our streets, our homes. It grasps at our institutions, even, of course, our politics. It makes British people poorer, our country less safe. It undermines our very democracy. As Foreign Secretary, I saw this firsthand. Kleptocrats bleeding their countries dry, stealing from their own people, bankrolling authoritarianism, fueling conflict, not least Putin's brutal war in Ukraine in the news again today. In the 21st century, the foreign and domestic now blur together. These networks spread across borders like a stain. Dirty money slipping through shadowy shell companies, through luxury property, through the crypto assets of hostile states, organised crime groups and terrorist networks. And too often the trail leads back here to London, to a financial system admired across the world, precisely because it is trusted. That trust and our security are now under attack, exploited by those Kremlin-linked elites who enable Putin's aggression. And we must be clear, this city, this country, will no longer be their haven. We will stop them. You can't represent a London constituency like mine in Tottenham and have roots in the Caribbean and Africa as I do without knowing how deeply this laundromat harms people everywhere. When corruption fuels instability abroad, it sends crime, conflict, and illegal migration back towards us. Here at home, it makes it harder to combat crime. The vast majority of our police, our prison and border officers do extraordinary work, but the minority who succumb to bribes, let more drugs and weapons onto our streets, leave more criminals on the loose, and eat away at the public trust frontline services depend on. 70% of the British public are worried about professional services being abused to hide illicit wealth. And they have every right to be. The National Crime Agency says that over 100 billion could be laundered through or within the UK every single year, helped by an army of enablers. And while most British professionals, our lawyers, our accountants, are honourable people and are honest, we must root out the minority who help corrupt actors hide their dirty money and polish their dirty reputations. So these behaviours harm our security, but they also harm our prosperity. And if we are to achieve growth, this government's driving mission, then we must choke off corruption to stop it from distorting our markets, blocking honest businesses from winning contracts, and damaging our reputation for integrity in the eyes of overseas investors. British firms faced an estimated 117,000 bribes last year. And when public procurement is corrupted, it is British taxpayers who pay dearly. And unlike our predecessors, this government will confront corruption. That's why we launched a new domestic corruption unit within the City of London Police, already leading proactive investigations. And as Foreign Secretary, I spearheaded a campaign to turn the tide against kleptocrats and their enablers, imposing tough sanctions to make the United Kingdom a more hostile environment for dirty money. In my own department, as I announced to Parliament just last week, we're reforming the criminal courts so they can bear down swiftly on the most sophisticated corruption, allowing specialist judges to hear the most serious, complex fraud cases alone, something the anti-corruption community has been calling for some time. Because these are crimes deliberately buried in years of accounts, myriad offshore structures, opaque trades, hidden by the most devious hands, with cases that go on for months and even years on end, with tens or even thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages of technical evidence. one case famously collapsing after almost 2 years in court at the cost of £25 million to the public purse. So judge-only trials in the most complex frauds will get justice moving faster and send a clear message. If you loot, if you launder, if you defraud the British people, you will be caught and tried by those who understand your tricks. And you will face the consequences. But we must go even further, working across every government department, every service, every sector, to make sure they are pulling in the same direction, and that is what this strategy will do. We'll start by strengthening enforcement, expanding the domestic corruption unit I just mentioned so it can carry out even more investigations using advanced intelligence tools to detect corruption and work more closely with our enforcement agencies, and we'll continue supporting the International Corruption Unit and the International Anti-Corruption Coordination Centre in the National Crime Agency, tackling overseas bribery and grand corruption, coordinating intelligence across borders and keeping the UK at the forefront of global action to disrupt kleptocrats and recover stolen assets. We'll increase sanctions and build new capability to counter professional enablers, starting with a dedicated coordinator to drive up joined-up action. And we'll provide even more support to affected states to trace and recover stolen good. And Baroness Hodge will lead a government review of assets to identify vulnerabilities exploited by criminals and recommend how we close them. We'll limit the movement of corrupt elites, toughening our border response to prevent them and their enablers from entering this country. And as AI accelerates, we will seize its potential to speed up serious fraud office investigations. Piloting a prototype AI corruption investigation assistant will also confront the insider threat head-on with tougher national integrity screening and vetting for police, better data sharing, and new measures to stop insiders from abusing their positions on our borders, in our prisons, and within the defence community. And we'll protect the people who shine a light on the corruption in the first place, the journalists and activists who shield the public right to know, by stopping the powerful from using abusive lawsuits, so-called slaps, to intimidate reporters and silence investigations and investigators, and bury the truth under a mountain of legal threats, because sunlight is always the best disinfectant. Our second strand recognises the role of business and civil society, so often on the front line of this fight. We will support industry to prevent and identify corruption and empower civil society to impose wrongdoing. We will overhaul the UK's anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing system, with the Financial Conduct Authority becoming responsible for supervising professional services firms. We will help UK businesses to combat bribery through the Serious Fraud Office and launch a new online anti-bribery resource for exporters. And we will explore opportunities to reform whistleblowing, including potential financial incentives for those brave enough to speak up. And finally, we will restore transparency and trust in politics, strengthening political finance rules so that those receiving political donations fully risk-assess contributions, building a genuine know-your-donor culture. We'll introduce a new mandatory code of conduct and a new local audit office for local government to reduce corruption risks in our councils. We'll improve training for public sector officials, especially on procurement, so badly abused sometimes, and reform misconduct in public office, replacing the old common law offence with new statutory offences to deliver greater clarity, consistency and accountability. And all this will help by being underpinned by our renewed global leadership. I'm proud that next year the UK will host a World Summit on countering illicit finance. I said we would do this in opposition, and I'm delighted that it's going to happen next summer, bringing together international partners, multilateral organisations, civil society and business to tackle the vulnerabilities that allow corruption and illicit finance to thrive. And we will build new partnerships with emerging financial centres and countries across the global south so we can counter new methods for moving illicit finance wherever they emerge. Let me end by thanking everyone in this room, not just for your tireless work, but for all the insight, expertise and persistence that has shaped this strategy. The task now, of course, is to deliver. That means all of us working together to confront those who seek to harm us, safeguard our national security, secure our borders, drive long-term growth, and send a message that is loud and clear. The UK does not tolerate corruption, and it never will. Let's get to work. Thank you very much.
Well, my thanks to the Deputy Prime Minister and Lord Chancellor. I think he has given us an important insight into the view from government, and it sets the scene very nicely for our next session, which is a panel discussion responding to the strategy and led by Dr. Sue Hawley, who has got her panel members, and she will introduce them to you. So can I invite them now, please, to come up and take the stage.